Arthur Finch, a name once synonymous with groundbreaking symphonies and sold-out concert halls, had deliberately faded into the quietude of Meadowbrook. The relentless glare of fame, the insatiable demands of critics, and the hollow echoes of endless applause had finally driven him to seek refuge in anonymity. He'd chosen a small, slightly dilapidated cottage on the edge of town, its overgrown garden a perfect camouflage for his desire to disappear. His grand piano, once the centerpiece of his opulent London apartment, now sat silent and draped in a dust sheet in the cottage's parlor, a monument to a life he'd intentionally left behind. He was now simply Old Finn, a man of few words, his days dedicated to the meticulous care of the town's long-neglected rose garden, a patch of thorny wilderness that mirrored his own guarded heart. Alara Vance, on the other hand, was a burst of sunshine in Meadowbrook. Her newly opened flower shop, petal and stem, across from the rose garden, was a riot of color and fragrance. She'd arrived in town with a hopeful heart and a dream of creating beauty and spreading joy through her floral artistry. Alara possessed an innate curiosity about the world and an unwavering belief in the goodness of people. She couldn't help but notice the silent, solitary figure tending the roses with such quiet intensity. There was a grace in his movements, a tenderness in his touch as he pruned and watered, that hinted at a depth she longed to understand. She'd often cross the street, offering him a warm scone she'd baked that morning or a steaming cup of herbal tea. "They say roses respond well to kindness," she'd say, her voice bright and cheerful. "And I reckon gardeners do too." Arthur would accept her offerings with a curt nod, his gaze rarely meeting hers. He was polite but reserved, a man who had built walls of silence around himself, brick by painstaking brick. The townsfolk, used to his taciturn nature, simply referred to him as Old Finn, keeps to himself, and left it at that. But Alara saw something more beneath the weathered exterior and the guarded eyes. One particularly sweltering afternoon, Alara noticed a change in the rose garden. The usually vibrant blooms seemed listless, their petals drooping under the oppressive heat. And then she saw it, a single black baccara, a rose of exquisite and rare beauty, its velvety petals beginning to curl and brown at the edges. She saw the almost imperceptible tremor in Arthur's hands as he gently touched the ailing bloom, a silent plea etched on his face. Concerned, Alara approached him. "That black baccara looks a little under the weather," she said softly. "They can be quite temperamental. They need a specific nutrient balance, and sometimes they respond to gentle vibrations, even music." She hesitated, then added, almost as an afterthought, "My grandmother always used to play soft melodies to her prize-winning orchids." Arthur's gaze, usually distant, sharpened with a sudden intensity. He looked at Alara, truly looked at her, for the first time. A flicker of something akin to hope sparked in his eyes. He reached into the pocket of his worn gardening jacket and pulled out a small, tarnished harmonica. It looked old, well-loved. He brought it to his lips and began to play a simple, melancholic tune. The melody was raw and heartfelt, filled with a deep longing that resonated with the quiet sadness Alara had sensed in him. As the music drifted through the air, a subtle change occurred in the rose garden. The drooping petals seemed to lift slightly, the colors appearing a touch more vibrant. The black baccara, in particular, seemed to respond, its velvety darkness deepening as if absorbing the sorrowful notes. Alara watched, spellbound, as the silent gardener communicated with his beloved roses through the language of music. Intrigued and moved, Alara started bringing her own instruments to the garden. She'd sit quietly on a nearby bench, her flute resting on her lap, waiting for Arthur to begin his musical tending. He'd play his harmonica, and she'd respond with delicate, airy notes from her flute. Sometimes she'd bring her small violin, its warm, rich tones weaving in and out of Arthur's melodies. They created a unique and enchanting soundscape in the heart of Meadowbrook, a secret symphony played for an audience of blooming roses. The roses, in turn, thrived, their colors becoming richer, their blooms more abundant than anyone in town could remember. One crisp evening, as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, Arthur began to play a melody on his harmonica that stopped Alara in her tracks. It was intricate, complex, breathtaking in its beauty and emotional depth. She recognized the underlying structure, the harmonic progressions. It was a fragment, a hauntingly beautiful fragment, of a lost symphony, a piece known only through hushed whispers in the world of classical music, Arthur Finch's unfinished masterpiece, Lament for a Lost Love. That's Finch's lament, she breathed, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes wide with astonishment. But how? Arthur stopped playing, his gaze fixed on the black baccara, now blooming with an almost ethereal beauty in the fading light. He took a deep breath, the silence stretching between them, thick with unspoken words. Finally he spoke, his voice raspy and unused, yet carrying a surprising resonance. "I am Arthur Finch," he confessed, the words heavy with the weight of years of secrecy. "I came here to find silence, to escape the noise, the expectations. But you, Alara, you showed me that even silence can sing, and that music can bloom in the quietest of hearts." Alara listened, completely stunned, as Arthur recounted his life as a celebrated composer, the immense pressure, the creative burnout, the crushing loneliness that had led him to abandon his former life. He spoke of how the simple act of tending the roses, and Alara's consistent kindness and genuine appreciation for his quiet work, had gradually begun to heal him, to reawaken the dormant music within his soul. The revelation of Arthur's true identity sent a ripple of astonishment through Meadowbrook. The quiet, unassuming gardener was actually a musical legend, a phantom composer whose disappearance had baffled the world for years. Reporters descended upon the small town, eager to uncover the story of the reclusive genius. Rosie, the owner of a local bakery, became a fierce protector of Arthur and Alara, chasing away persistent journalists with her rolling pin. Arthur, however, remained unchanged. He continued his quiet routine in the rose garden, now often accompanied by Alara and her instruments. Their musical collaborations became a cherished part of the town's rhythm, a testament to the unexpected beauty that could blossom in the most unlikely of circumstances. Their connection deepened, built on a foundation of shared passion and mutual respect, transcending the vast difference in their past lives. One autumn afternoon, as the leaves began to turn golden, Arthur presented Alara with a single, perfectly formed black baccara rose. "Thank you, Alara," he said, his voice filled with a warmth she hadn't heard before. "You reminded me that even after the harshest winter, there is always the promise of a new bloom." Alara smiled, her heart full. She knew Arthur might never return to the grand concert halls of the world, and she didn't expect him to. He had found his own kind of symphony in Meadowbrook, a quiet, harmonious existence filled with the beauty of roses and the genuine connection of a kindred spirit. And in return, Alara had discovered that even the most silent of souls held a wealth of untold melodies, waiting for the right heart to listen.